Now, many of you are listening to us, particularly in the United States. In the Washington, D.C. area, you can listen on FM 105.5, other magic numbers there. But you can listen all across the United States, from sea to shining sea on AM. You can listen across the entire globe on SputnikNews.com. But if you are one of the, wait for it, 700,000 people who watched as well as listened to the show last week, then here's what I'm asking you to do. If you are watching on Facebook, Mr. Al G. Rhythm is still out to stop us, so I need you to share it now with every person on your contact list, every friend you have on Facebook. Tell them that you are now listening to the mother of all talk shows, watching the mother of all talk shows. You can do that on my own Facebook page, on RT's multiple Facebook pages, and on my YouTube channel and RT's multiple YouTube channels. You can do it, as an increasing number of you are, another record number last week, on your phone, on Twitter. You can watch on Instagram. My good wife is here, so we're back on Instagram. You can watch on Twitch. You can watch on Telegram, all kinds of platforms. But they all add up to this simple fact, that we are the biggest political show in media in the world. Our podcast again increased by 25% last week, and the number of countries that we were downloaded from went up from 64 to 72. Countries including China, Croatia, Thailand, Brazil, Cyprus, and Argentina, and many, many more. I'll tell you later how you can download the podcast. But just know this, our podcast numbers are higher than The Guardian, higher than Sky, higher than Nigel Farage on GB News, higher than virtually any other political podcast anywhere to be found in the world. Just think about that. And we do it all from this little shoebox on a very, very slim budget. I hope you're listening in Moscow. We bring forth magic from this studio for one simple reason, that we speak the unvarnished truth. It's our truth, to be sure. Other varieties of the truth are available, and you can get them on the BBC, you can get them on ITV, you can get them on MSNBC or CNN. But we believe this is the closest to the unvarnished truth that you're going to get. And we're counterintuitive. This is not a one-note opera. We are unpredictable in our take on things. You might, for example, have expected me to rally to the side of President Joe Biden because my arch enemy, Tony Blair, today called him an imbecile. Now, it's not every day that the former Prime Minister of Britain calls the current President of the United States an imbecile, but I'm not going to rally to Joe Biden because he is an imbecile, almost clinically imbecilic. I've been saying this to you for months, long before he was elected. You would not send Joe Biden out for a loaf of bread to the shops, and yet he's sitting with his finger on the nuclear trigger. He's making decisions of great moment, not just to the United States, but to the world, as we have seen over the last 10 days and the fall of Kabul and the return to power of the Taliban. Tony Blair was right. There are not many times you've heard me say that. But I'll tell you something that he didn't say, is that it was Tony Blair and George W. Bush that made this mess in the first place. And to call the guy who tried to end it the imbecile is to mistake your far greater act of madness, a criminal act of madness, to go invading and occupying these countries in the first place. Do I have to sketch for you the mountain of dead people for whom Tony Blair and George W. Bush are responsible? Do you know that you could not possibly pile all the dead bodies on top of each other and see the summit from any angle anywhere in the world? You'd need to be in space to see the mountain of dead people for whom these murderers are responsible. Shall I count them? Shall I count the millions of dead people that Blair and Bush have killed or caused to be killed? It would take the whole show, it would take the whole night, the whole day, the whole week, the whole month, the whole year to count them all. This is serious, serious business. Tony Blair should be on trial for war crimes, for crimes against humanity. And yet he just clicks his fingers and the entire British media gathers at his feet to hear him call somebody else an imbecile. Do you feel me? Do you see where I'm coming from here? Bush and Blair are the architects of a series of cataclysms around the entire globe. And they're complaining that in Afghanistan, at least, it's coming to an end. Of course, Biden did it backside for elbow. You don't withdraw your forces until you've airlifted all your nationals from the scene of your crimes. That's obvious. You've got tens of thousands of Americans stranded now in Kabul, with the US having to fly back in forces they'd already flown out in order to secure the perimeter, and not very well. 10 people have been shot dead in that airport in the last 10 days. Joe Biden thought there were none. People have fallen from the wheel carriage of American aircraft taking off. People are handing over their babies over barbed wire fences. Saigon? No Saigon here, nothing to see here. It is an absolute catastrophe how it has been handled, and it's not over yet. If the United States does not leave by 9/11, the Taliban will start firing at them, and they're surrounded by thousands of people. Or Americans who are not at the airport yet will be seized as hostages for negotiation with the superpowers by these ragged-assed, carbine-toting, bicycle-going Taliban. Now, Tony Blair found them very difficult to stomach today. He's worried, you see, about the plight of women and children in Afghanistan. Not so worried that he didn't blow the heads of thousands of women and children in Iraq, in Afghanistan, by his exhortation in Libya, in Yemen, in Syria. He has been responsible for the murder of untold hundreds of thousands of women and children. But he's very worried that Some of the girls going to school in Afghanistan might not now be able to continue their education. Tony Blair works for Saudi Arabia. Has he ever raised his voice about the situation of women in Saudi Arabia? Never. How could he? He's on the payroll. My anger and contempt for these people, as you can tell, is bottomless. But that doesn't mean I'm with Joe Biden. The United States and its satrapies, like Britain, France, the Netherlands, and so on, have withdrawn from Afghanistan because they lost a war. No matter what firepower they were able to put on the battlefield, or more particularly to rain down from the skies, they could not defeat these ragged-assed Taliban. And so they left, because even the United States cannot go on fighting a war for 20 years and then another 20 years. That stuff belongs in Orwellian fiction. We have always been at war with Afghanistan. But because I recognize the fact that the Taliban are now the power in Afghanistan, able to summon Hamid Karzai and Abdullah to their council and give them jobs, to put some lipstick on the face of the new Taliban administration, doesn't mean, as some idiots who can only think in binary seem to think, that I am somehow with the Taliban. Don't you dare try and put the Taliban on me. I was opposing the Taliban and their fathers and their uncles when Britain and the United States were stuffing guns and money and propaganda support down their throat. News at 10 in England was a nightly panegyric to the obscurantist Mujahideen. Every night, Sandy Gall and his confreres told us about these freedom fighters. They were never fighting for freedom. Actually, the only freedom that ever existed in Afghanistan was in the short period of the government that Britain and the United States expended blood and treasure in oceanic proportions to ensure that they destroyed. You feel me? I'm not with the Taliban. I'll never be with these obscurantists. I was with progress. President Najibullah was a friend of mine. The fathers of the Taliban hanged him from a lamppost, cut his penis off, and stuffed it in his mouth. Don't talk to me about responsibility for the triumph of these obscurantists in Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, Britain and the United States did everything that they could to ensure that the very same obscurantists came to power in Libya, and they did everything that they could to try and visit the same bloody, grisly fate on the people of Syria. These savages are us. They would never have existed but for us. We conjured them forth like demons. Demons. Satanic demons. We conjured them forth. We rubbed the lamp in order to fulfill the principle that my enemy's enemy is my friend. They brought forth these monsters And now they ask us to believe that they're crying in their chinois at the fact that some girls now won't get to school at the same time as they're murdering girls in the Yemen with the same weapons wielded by the same savages in power in Saudi Arabia. Pass the sick bag, Alice. We'll be talking about other things too. We'll be talking about the big speech being given right now by Donald Trump. After all, it's a zero-sum game, isn't it? There's only two cheeks to the US political ass. It's either Biden or Trump, isn't it? That's what you told us. Well, Trump may very well be on his way back, as President Biden surely is on his way out. We'll be looking at the trials of R. Kelly, a troubadour of note, one of the most powerful R&B vocalists of all time, now on trial yet again in the United States of America. We'll be talking about the SNP Green Coalition, a hydra-headed monster that's now come to power in Edinburgh. We'll be talking to one of Mr. Blair's former ministers about that. If he's listened to this monologue, maybe he won't show up.